Less is more. Master the magic of a simple life. Let me ask you something, and please be honest with yourself for just a moment. When was the last time you felt truly at peace? Not the kind of peace you fake on a Sunday morning before checking your phone. Not the temporary calm right before another wave of responsibilities crashes into you. I mean real peace. The kind that doesn't need anything to be added to it. The kind that doesn't ask you to perform, produce, or prove. If you can't remember the last time, you're not broken. You're just exhausted from living in a world that has confused movement with meaning, busyness with importance, and accumulation with success. Here's the strange truth nobody tells you. The reason your life feels heavy isn't because you're failing. It's because you're carrying too much that was never yours to carry in the first place. Every notification you respond to, every opinion you absorb, every comparison you allow, every yes you say out of guilt, every possession you keep out of habit, they all add up. And before you know it, your soul is buried under layers of stuff, schedules, and silent expectations. But what if I told you that the most powerful version of your life isn't waiting on the other side of more? What if it's already there, hidden beneath all the noise, all the clutter, and all the obligations you never questioned? What if the real upgrade was never adding something new but bravely removing what no longer belongs? That's what this audiobook is about. Not minimalism in the trendy aesthetic sense, not deprivation, sacrifice, or some rigid lifestyle that demands you give up everything you love. This is something deeper. This is about reclaiming the quiet inside you that life has been drowning out for years. This is about waking up one morning and realizing your time finally feels like yours again. Your mind feels like yours again. Your life feels like yours again. You and I are going to walk through this together, like two friends sitting across from each other at a small wooden table in a quiet cafe, talking about the things that actually matter. I'm not going to lecture you. I'm not going to give you a checklist that promises overnight transformation. I'm going to share something more honest, a way of seeing your life that once you understand it, you'll never be able to unsee. And that's where real change begins. Throughout these chapters, we'll explore why simplicity is the most underrated form of freedom. We'll talk about how to stop letting daily chaos hijack your attention, how to figure out what truly deserves space in your one and only life, how to build relationships that nourish you instead of drain you, how to design days that feel lighter on your shoulders and richer in your heart. We'll talk about time, possessions, noise, depth, automation, and ultimately the philosophy that ties all of this together. By the end, you won't just understand simplicity, you'll feel it, you'll start to live it, and slowly, almost without noticing, the version of you that's been buried under everything will start rising back to the surface. The calm one, the clear one, the grounded one, the one who finally knows the difference between a life that looks impressive and a life that actually feels good to live. So take a breath, settle in, let your shoulders drop. This isn't a sprint. This is a return to yourself, a return to the simple, sacred truth that less, when chosen wisely, is the most extraordinary gift you can give your life. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop letting life run you like a rented treadmill. There's a moment, usually somewhere between the third coffee and the 15th open browser tab, when something inside you whispers, "This isn't sustainable." You ignore it. You always do. Because whispers are easy to silence when the world around you is screaming for your attention. But that whisper is the most important voice you have. It's the part of you that remembers what it felt like before life became a series of fires you constantly rush to put out. Here's what nobody warns you about. Life doesn't crush you all at once. It doesn't break you with a single dramatic blow. It buries you slowly. One unread email, one unanswered message, one favor you didn't have time to do, one social commitment you didn't really want, one worry you absorbed from someone else's drama, one news article that ruined your morning, one scroll session that stole your evening. None of these things alone seem heavy, but add them up across days, weeks, months, and years, and suddenly you're carrying a weight you can't even name. You just know you're tired in places sleep can't reach. This kind of tired isn't physical, it's existential. It's the fatigue of living a life that's running you instead of being run by you. And the worst part, everyone around you seems to be in the same boat, so it feels normal. Friends complain about being overwhelmed. Co-workers brag about being slammed. Parents wear exhaustion like a badge. Even teenagers walk around looking like they're managing a small country. We've collectively agreed that this is just how life is now. But just because something is widespread doesn't make it healthy. Just because it's normal doesn't mean it's right. Let me say something that might land hard. Being overwhelmed is not a measure of how full your life is. It's a measure of how cluttered it has become. There's a massive difference between a meaningful life and a busy one. A meaningful life has weight, but it's the kind of weight that grounds you. A busy life has weight too, but it's the kind that crushes you. One feels like roots. The other feels like rocks in a backpack you forgot you were wearing. Overwhelm happens when everything tries to be urgent at the same time. Every text feels like it needs an instant reply. Every task feels like it can't wait. Every problem feels like yours to solve. Every opinion feels like one you have to respond to. Every trend feels like one you should know about. And when everything demands your attention, the most precious thing you own, your focus, gets sliced into so many tiny pieces that nothing meaningful can grow from them. You feel productive, but you're not. You feel engaged, but you're depleted. You feel alive, but you're just stimulated. There's a haunting difference between being alive and being merely activated, and most of us have forgotten which one we're actually experiencing. Here's where the trap gets really sneaky. You can spend years moving fast without going anywhere. You can fill calendars without filling your soul. You can answer every message without ever having a real conversation. You can run the marathon of modern adulthood and somehow end up at the same starting line, just more exhausted, more disconnected, and more convinced that the answer is to push harder. But the answer was never to push harder. The answer was always to question what you were running toward in the first place. So let's pause right here, right now. Take a breath with me. The first step toward a simpler life isn't a planner, an app, a course, or a productivity hack. It isn't even cleaning out your home or unsubscribing from 100 email lists. The first step is interrupting the automatic flood. It's catching yourself in the middle of the chaos and asking one simple but life-changing question. Is this important, or is it just loud? Loud things grab you. Important things grow you. The two are almost never the same. Loud things demand reaction. Important things deserve reflection. Loud things scream from the surface. Important things sit quietly in the depths, waiting for you to remember them. Most of what overwhelms you is loud. Almost none of it is essential. And when you start telling the difference, something incredible happens. Your life begins to lighten before you've changed a single external thing. The weight you've been carrying wasn't always real weight. A lot of it was illusion. A lot of it was inherited urgency that never belonged to you. There's a sweet, freeing realization that comes when you start paying attention. You begin to notice that not every problem is yours to solve. Not every complaint deserves your sympathy. Not every drama needs your involvement. Not every fire needs your bucket of water. Some things will resolve on their own if you simply stop pouring your energy into them. Some things were never problems. They were just noise dressed up like emergencies. And the more you observe this, the more you realize how much of your life has been spent putting out fires that were never burning anything important. You'll also begin to see something deeply uncomfortable, but ultimately liberating. A lot of what overwhelms you is overwhelming because you allowed it to be. You said yes when your gut said no. You agreed to things you didn't want to agree to. You stayed in conversations that drained you. You took on responsibilities that weren't yours. You held expectations that didn't serve you. You let people, platforms, and pressures into your life without ever asking whether they deserved access. This sounds harsh, but please hear it with the gentleness it's meant to carry. If your life is overwhelming, you are not the victim of it. You are also not the villain. You are simply the architect who fell asleep on the job. And the moment you wake up, you can start designing again. This is the most important news I can give you in this chapter. If you allowed it, you can change it. You don't need a miracle. You don't need permission. You don't need someone else to give you space. You can take it back gently, day by day. It starts not with discipline, but with ownership. Ownership of your time. Ownership of your attention. Ownership of your boundaries. Ownership of your emotional bandwidth. Without ownership, your life becomes the property of whoever shouts the loudest. With ownership, your life becomes yours again. And when life becomes yours again, you'd be amazed at how naturally it begins to simplify. Here's a truth most people miss, though, and it's an important one. Simplicity isn't about having less to manage. It's about having less that needs managing. There is a vast and beautiful difference between those two things. You can clean your entire home and still have a chaotic mind. You can delete every app and still feel pulled in 1,000 directions. You can write the most beautiful planner pages and still feel emotionally underwater. The real work isn't on the outside. It's in the quiet inside, where you finally choose what gets to matter and what gets to go. When you stop letting life overwhelm you, you start to feel something you might have forgotten was even possible. Mental breathing room. Space to think before you react. Space to feel before you suppress. Space to choose before you commit. Space to actually live the life you've been too busy to enjoy. That space isn't a luxury. It's not selfish. It's the foundation of everything beautiful that's about to come. Because in that space, you'll finally be able to hear yourself again. And once you can hear yourself, the rest gets easier. So before we move on, I want you to do one tiny thing. Just one. Look at your day, today, right now. Find one thing that's loud but not important. One. Maybe a notification, maybe a worry, maybe a meeting you don't really need to be in, and let it go. Just for today. Just to feel what it's like to choose. That single act of choosing is where the magic of simplicity begins. Not someday. Today. Right here. Chapter 2. Decide what actually matters before life decides for you. If you don't know what truly matters to you, the world will fill that empty space with what matters to it. And believe me, the world has no shortage of opinions on what your life should look like. It will hand you goals you didn't choose, dreams you didn't dream, milestones you didn't ask for, and a definition of success that has more to do with appearance than with peace. Then it will quietly applaud while you exhaust yourself chasing things that were never meant for you. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just culture. And culture is incredibly persuasive when you don't have a clear sense of yourself. One of the biggest reasons life feels complicated isn't the number of things you actually do. It's the number of things you've been told you should care about. Every trend wants your attention. Every opportunity wants your interest. Every cause wants your support. Every aesthetic wants your imitation. And the unspoken pressure is that if you don't engage with all of it, you're somehow falling behind. But here's the thing nobody admits out loud. When everything matters equally, nothing matters deeply. Your soul cannot find its center when it's being pulled in 50 directions by 50 competing values. You become a reflection of everyone else's priorities and a stranger to your own. Deciding what matters isn't a productivity exercise. It's not making a vision board on a Sunday afternoon and forgetting about it by Tuesday. It's a much braver, much more intimate act. It's looking at the one life you've been given and saying, this is what I want to be about. This is what I'll protect. This is what I'll build my days around. Without that kind of clarity, you'll drift. And drifting feels comfortable in the moment because it doesn't ask you to commit to anything. But drifting always leads to the same destination. Regret. Quiet, slow, accumulating regret. The kind that doesn't show up dramatically, but reveals itself in your 50s when you wonder where the time went and why so much of it was spent on things that didn't even belong to you. Fulfillment, on the other hand, lives on the other side of conscious choice. It begins the moment you stop asking, what does everyone expect from me? And start asking, what do I actually want my life to feel like? These are very different questions, and they lead to very different lives. When you don't have clarity, every demand feels personal. Every opportunity feels like one you should grab. Every problem feels like yours. Every distraction feels harmless. But once you know what matters, something almost magical happens. The unnecessary stuff becomes obvious. The fake urgencies lose their grip. The detours show themselves clearly for what they are. You stop saying yes to things that look good on paper but feel hollow in practice. You stop chasing applause from rooms you don't even want to be in. Clarity is like turning on a soft lamp in a cluttered room. Suddenly, you can see what to keep and what to release, and the room itself doesn't feel as overwhelming anymore. But you can't optimize a life you've never sat with. You can't simplify a life you've never honestly examined. You can't prioritize a life you've never claimed as fully your own. So let's get a little more personal here, because this is where the real work hides. Sit with yourself even just for a few quiet minutes, and ask the questions most people are too distracted to ask. What do I value more, time or status? Freedom or approval? Depth or variety? Peace or stimulation? Real progress or impressive appearances? Connection or convenience? Presence or productivity? These questions aren't rhetorical. They're surgical. They cut through years of inherited expectations and reveal what's actually underneath. The answers might surprise you. They might even disappoint you, because they often won't match what your social media bio says about you. But that disappointment is sacred. It's the disappointment of meeting your real self after years of performing someone else's role. And once you meet your real self, you can finally stop pretending and start living. Here's another question I want you to sit with, and please don't rush past it. If everything you currently chase suddenly disappeared, what would still feel meaningful in your life? Strip away the achievements, the validations, the milestones, the trends. What's left? For most people, the answer is shockingly tender. A morning with someone they love. A long, slow walk with no destination. A meaningful conversation. The smell of something cooking. The feeling of doing work that actually helps someone. The quiet satisfaction of growing as a person. The peace of feeling at home in their own skin. Almost nobody answers, I just need a slightly bigger drawer for my receipts. Or, I wish I had more notifications. Or, if only I could attend more meetings I don't care about. These artificial desires only show up when you stop thinking and start consuming. The real desires, the ones that actually feed your soul, have always been simple. They've just been buried under the loud ones. But knowing what matters isn't enough. This is where most people get stuck, and it's not their fault. Values are easy to declare and incredibly hard to live. You can say you value health and still spend most of your days in habits that erode it. You can say you value family and still scroll through your phone during dinner. You can say you value peace and still fill every silent moment with stimulation. The gap between what you say you value and how you actually live is where guilt grows. And guilt is one of the heaviest, most useless emotions on the planet. It convinces you that you're failing without actually motivating you to change. Here's the gentler, kinder truth. Closing that gap doesn't require an overnight life overhaul. It doesn't require throwing your whole schedule away or moving to a cabin in the woods. It just requires alignment. Tiny, consistent alignment. One choice at a time. One honest moment at a time. Today, can you make one decision that honors what you say you care about? One healthier meal? One real conversation? One firm but gentle no? One pause before reaching for your phone? One walk without your earbuds? That's it. Small alignment compounds into a radically different life. Big intentions without small alignment compound into nothing. There's another part of deciding what matters that we don't talk about enough. Choosing what matters means making peace with what doesn't. You cannot prioritize everything. The word priority itself originally had no plural form. There was the priority, singular. Then somewhere along the way, we started using it in plural, and we've been confused ever since. You can have a few core priorities. You cannot have 50. And accepting that some things won't make the cut is one of the most liberating acts of self-respect you can practice. This is where real simplicity gets uncomfortable, because real simplicity requires loss. Not financial loss, emotional loss. The loss of the fantasy that you can do it all. the loss of trying to please everyone, the loss of being everywhere at once, the loss of staying available to every door, every option, every imagined life path. True focus requires closing some doors. True priority requires saying no, sometimes to good things, in order to protect great ones. True simplicity requires letting go of identities that don't fit anymore, even if they once did. It feels uncomfortable in the beginning, but on the other side of that discomfort is freedom. The kind of freedom that doesn't need an audience, the kind that doesn't ask permission, the kind that finally feels like home. When you decide what matters, you also start deciding who matters, and that's a tender but essential conversation. Some relationships nourish you, others hollow you out. Some people support your growth, others quietly resent it. Some friendships are mutual, others are one way. Reducing the complexity of your social world isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's choosing not to abandon yourself for the comfort of others. You don't have to make dramatic exits. You can simply start showing up more for the people who reciprocate and a little less for the ones who don't. Your energy will gently redirect itself to where it belongs. Deciding what matters is, in the end, an act of bravery. The world made it easy to follow the script. It's hard to choose your own. The world made it easy to chase what everyone chases. It's hard to want something different. But please hear this. Easy doesn't lead to meaningful. Easy leads to forgettable. Meaningful begins the moment you choose direction over drift, depth over volume, and your own quiet truth over the loud opinions of the world. So pause for a moment. Truly pause. Place your hand on your chest if it helps. Take a breath and ask yourself softly, if my life were simpler, what would it be filled with? Whatever rises in answer, however small or unglamorous, that is your beginning. That is your compass. That is the foundation upon which the rest of this beautiful, simpler life will be built. Chapter 3. Let go of what was never meant to stay. Once you start to see what truly matters, the next part of the journey arrives, and it's the part most people quietly avoid. Letting go, releasing, removing, saying goodbye to the things, thoughts, and patterns that have been quietly weighing you down for years. This is where simplicity stops being a feel-good idea and starts becoming a practice. And to be honest with you, it's the part where most people get stuck. Not because they don't know what to release, but because releasing feels uncomfortable even when what you're releasing is hurting you. Here's something worth sitting with. We're taught from a young age that growth means adding. Add a new skill, add a new habit, add a new routine, add a new goal, add a new friend, add a new strategy. We treat life like a stack we keep building on top of, never realizing that the foundation can only carry so much before it cracks. Real growth, the kind that actually transforms you, is almost always subtractive. It's the slow, brave art of removing what's been blocking the version of you that's been waiting underneath all along. You don't need to become someone new. You just need to release the layers that aren't really you anymore. The things that no longer serve you wear many disguises. Some are obvious. The friendship that drains you, the job that eats at your soul, the habit that you know is hurting you, the phone scroll that swallows your evenings whole. But others are sneaky. They hide in plain sight, dressed up as commitments, beliefs, or identities you've outgrown but haven't realized you've outgrown. You might still be pursuing a goal you set 5 years ago because you don't want to admit it doesn't excite you anymore. You might still be holding on to a self-image that no longer matches who you've quietly become. You might still be carrying the version of you that other people expected you to become, even though that version was never really yours. Life doesn't get heavy because we keep seeking joy. It gets heavy because we keep gripping things we've already outgrown. And gripping is exhausting in a way few people talk about. It uses energy. It uses attention. It uses the parts of you that could be pouring into something alive instead of something already finished. Let's start somewhere practical. Look at where your time actually goes, not where you wish it went, not where you tell people it goes, where it really goes. Time is the most honest reflection of your life. It tells the truth even when you don't want to hear it. You might find yourself pouring hours into things that don't matter to you anymore. Group chats that haven't been meaningful in years. Hobbies you've grown out of but feel guilty abandoning. Shows you don't even enjoy but watch out of routine. Errands you've turned into rituals for no real reason. None of these are bad. They're just heavy. And heavy things have a way of pretending they're light because we've been carrying them for so long. Then there's your inner world, which carries even more weight than your outer one. What stories are you telling yourself that aren't actually true anymore? Maybe you still believe you're not creative because someone told you that when you were 9. Maybe you still believe rest is laziness because your family modeled hustle as worth. Maybe you still believe success has to be exhausting because everyone you grew up around treated it that way. These beliefs may have served the version of you who needed to survive. They don't serve the version of you who's trying to thrive. Some beliefs are like winter coats, useful in their season, suffocating after spring arrives. Growth almost always begins with unlearning, and unlearning is harder than learning because it asks you to question what you've never questioned. But trust me, on the other side of unlearning is freedom you didn't know was possible. Then there's the emotional clutter, the grudges you're still holding on to even though you swore you'd let them go, the resentments toward people who probably haven't thought about you in months, the comparisons that quietly steal your joy, the regrets that replay in your mind at 3 in the morning. Emotional clutter is the heaviest kind because it doesn't take up physical space. It takes up the space inside you where peace is supposed to live. You can clean every drawer in your home, but if your inner world is cluttered, you'll still feel suffocated by your own life. You cannot pour both old pain and new possibility into the same cup. Something has to be set down so something better can be picked up. And then there are the people. This part is tender, so let's go gently. Not every person who enters your life is meant to stay forever. Some come for a season, like a warm chapter you'll always remember fondly. Some come for a lesson, teaching you something about yourself you couldn't have learned alone. And a rare few are meant for the long road. The painful part is when we treat seasonal people as if they're lifetime companions. We hold on tightly, even as the connection fades, even as we grow in different directions, even as the relationship starts to require more from us than it gives. Letting people go isn't always about cutting them out. Sometimes it's just about loosening your grip and allowing the connection to find its natural shape. Releasing what no longer serves you doesn't have to feel cold or harsh. In fact, when done from a place of love, it feels almost gentle. It feels like exhaling a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding for years. It feels like making room. And room is the most sacred thing in a simple life. Without room, even good things suffocate. With room, even small things flourish. There's one more layer that people rarely consider, and it's worth mentioning. Sometimes what's draining you is opportunity itself. We've been raised in a culture that says, never turn down an opportunity. Doors only open once. Take everything you can. But that mindset will quietly destroy you. Not every open door leads somewhere worth going. Some doors lead to detours. Some lead to dead ends dressed up as adventures. The most mature kind of wisdom isn't chasing every shiny thing. It's having the courage to walk past most of them and choose only the ones that align with the life you're actually trying to build. Every time you release something that isn't serving you, you create space. And space is the most underrated gift you can give your life. Space to breathe, space to think, space to feel, space to redirect your energy into what genuinely matters. Without space, even your best intentions get crowded out. With space, your values finally have room to live. This doesn't have to happen in dramatic sweeps. You don't have to throw your whole life out. Just start noticing. Notice what feels heavy. Notice what feels forced. Notice what feels obligatory rather than meaningful. And one by one, gently, you can begin to set those things down. You're not rejecting them. You're just choosing not to carry them anymore. There's a difference, and it matters. Letting go isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of everything that needs your space to grow. Chapter 4. Fewer, but truly yours. Imagine for a moment a life where everything around you, the people, the possessions, the projects, the daily rhythms, all of it, actually fits you. Not impresses you. Fits you. Like a soft sweater that's been worn just enough to feel like home. That's what choosing fewer but better feels like. It's not a trendy aesthetic or a Pinterest-friendly lifestyle. It's the deeply personal art of curating a life that actually feels like yours. Most people don't suffer from a lack of options. We are drowning in options, drowning in choices, drowning in opinions, drowning in goals, drowning in goods. Walk into any store, scroll through any feed, browse any app, and you'll be hit with a tidal wave of more to buy, more to consider, more to compare, more to want. And almost none of it makes us happier. In fact, studies and our own personal experience both whisper the same uncomfortable truth. Too many choices don't liberate us. They paralyze us. They exhaust us. They make us feel like we're always missing something, even when we already have plenty. Quality is a function of selection. When you raise your standards, your need for quantity quietly drops. You don't need 8 shallow friendships when 2 deep ones give you everything those 8 couldn't. You don't need a packed wardrobe when a small collection of pieces you actually love makes you feel confident every morning. You don't need 15 goals scattered across every corner of your life when 3 meaningful ones could transform you. The paradox of simplicity is that the more carefully you choose, the less you need. But choosing better isn't about expensive or fancy or rare. Better doesn't mean luxury. Better means alignment. Better means whatever serves the life you're actually trying to build, not the life you're being sold. A handmade ceramic mug from your favorite local place can be better than the most expensive coffee setup if it makes your morning ritual feel sacred. A simple notebook can be better than a $1,000 planner if it actually gets used. A modest dinner with people you adore can be better than the trendiest restaurant in town if the connection at the table is real. Better is personal. Better is contextual. Better is honest. And it's only honest when you stop letting external voices define it for you. Choosing better also requires choosing deliberately. So many of our acquisitions, both material and emotional, happen reactively. We buy because something is on sale. We say yes because we feel guilty saying no. We commit because it looks impressive on paper. We collect responsibilities because everyone else seems to be doing the same. But deliberate choosing means slowing down enough to ask the right questions before something enters your life. Why do I want this? Will this still feel valuable to me a month from now? Does this fit who I am or who I think I should appear to be? Even just pausing to ask these questions changes what you bring into your life forever. This same principle applies to how you spend your days. Not every activity deserves a place on your calendar. So many people are exhausted not because they're doing too much that matters, but because they're doing too much that doesn't. Days get filled with filler, tasks that look productive but don't actually move anything meaningful forward. Meetings that could be emails, projects that don't connect to your purpose, errands that have become rituals just because no one questioned them. Choosing better means designing days filled with high-value activities, real conversation instead of small talk, real work instead of busy work, real rest instead of distraction disguised as relaxation, real learning instead of mindless scrolling. Relationships especially benefit from this fewer but better approach. We've been sold the idea that more friends, more contacts, more connections means a more fulfilling social life. But fulfillment doesn't come from being known by many. It comes from being deeply known by a few. When you invest in fewer relationships, depth has the room to grow. Trust has time to form. Real understanding has the chance to take root. Shallow connections drain your energy because they ask you to perform. Deep connections feed your energy because they let you be real. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Access is something earned, and it should be rare and meaningful, not handed out freely to anyone who happens to be in your contacts. When you choose better goals, your whole life shifts in tone. Many people spend years chasing goals that don't really belong to them. Goals inherited from culture, family, social comparison, or some old version of themselves they've outgrown. They work hard for things they don't even genuinely want, and then feel strangely empty when they finally arrive at the finish line. Better goals don't look like everyone else's goals. They feel right. They energize you instead of draining you. They reward you with meaning instead of just applause. And they often look much smaller from the outside than they feel from the inside. Choosing better extends to your environment too. The space around you isn't just decoration. It shapes your mind. Every object in your home asks for a small piece of your attention. Every unfinished project sits in the back of your mind as a quiet bookmark. Every cluttered surface adds a tiny tax to your peace. When you keep fewer things, the things you keep become easier to enjoy. They become more present, more appreciated, more useful. Empty space isn't emptiness. It's potential. It's room. It's where calm lives. But here's the part that really matters. Choosing better isn't a one-time decision. It's a lifelong practice. Your needs will evolve. Your values will refine. Your identity will keep shifting in beautiful, unpredictable ways. What was better for you 3 years ago might not be better for you now. A simple life stays simple because it gets recalibrated regularly. When life starts to feel heavy again, it's almost always a sign that something is overdue for review. That's not failure. That's just being alive. Choosing better also asks something rare of you in a fast world. Patience. Quality almost never appears quickly. Deep relationships take time. Skills take time. Meaningful goals take time. Real change takes time. Acting slowly in a culture obsessed with speed feels rebellious, but it's the most loving rebellion you can offer your own life. When you choose better, you stop being impressed by how fast you can acquire things and start being impressed by how deeply you experience what you already have. Ultimately, this whole approach is an act of self-respect. It's saying, my life is too valuable to fill with things that don't actually matter to me. It's saying, I am allowed to be selective. I am allowed to want what fits. I am allowed to release what doesn't. In a world that pressures you to accumulate endlessly, that kind of selectiveness isn't just refreshing, it's revolutionary. Chapter 5. Step off the conveyor belt of more somewhere along the way. Life turned into a conveyor belt. It just keeps moving, and we keep grabbing things off of it without ever asking where it leads. More milestones, more upgrades, more titles, more followers, more square footage, more experiences to post, more everything. The pressure is constant, and it's so woven into our daily lives that most people don't even notice it anymore. It's the background music of modern existence. And like any background music, it shapes your mood without you ever consciously hearing it. This pressure to keep accumulating isn't just about owning more things. It runs much deeper than that. It's about proving something, proving you're successful, proving you're keeping up, proving you're not falling behind, proving you're worthy of the space you take up in the world. But the moment you tie your sense of worth to accumulation, you set yourself up for an exhausting kind of treadmill. Accumulation has no finish line. There is always a next level, a nicer place, a newer model, a bigger title, a more impressive milestone. The bar keeps moving, and you keep chasing, and somewhere along the way, you forget why you started running in the first place. The problem isn't ambition. Ambition is beautiful. The problem is the inability to ever feel complete without the next thing. When satisfaction becomes conditional on more, gratitude becomes impossible. Presence becomes impossible. Joy becomes impossible. You're always anticipating the next chapter, never living the current one. You're always scanning the horizon, never noticing the ground beneath your feet. And one day you wake up and realize you've been alive for decades, but you can't remember the actual texture of those years because your eyes were always fixed somewhere else. To break free from this cycle, you have to first understand where it comes from, because you can't dismantle what you don't see. A huge part of it is cultural conditioning. From the time you were small, you were rewarded for getting things. A new toy, a new gadget, a new outfit, a new achievement. The message was consistent. More means better. More means worthy. More means loved. You were never really taught to curate, to choose intentionally, or to question why you wanted what you wanted. You were taught to acquire, to keep, and to display. And by the time you became an adult, those lessons had become invisible. They didn't feel like beliefs anymore. They felt like reality. Another huge part is comparison. We don't accumulate in isolation. We accumulate in relation to everyone else. If everyone around you seemed content with what they had, you'd probably feel content too. But everywhere you look, you see curated versions of other people's lives, their best moments, their proudest purchases, their highlight reels disguised as everyday life. You compare your behind the scenes to their stage performance, and of course, you come up short. Comparison isn't reality. It's a manufactured benchmark. And chasing it doesn't lead to joy, it leads to exhaustion. There's also an emotional layer. People accumulate to soothe something. Shopping to feel better after a hard day. Upgrading to feel relevant. Owning to feel secure. Buying to feel like they've accomplished something. But these are emotional band-aids on internal wounds. Material things are external solutions to internal feelings, and they almost never work. You can fill your home, fill your closet, fill your shelves, but if the deeper needs are unmet, the emptiness comes back faster than the next delivery. Real fulfillment doesn't come from accumulation, it comes from alignment, from meaning, from connection, from knowing you're spending your one life on things that genuinely match who you are. Breaking free from the pressure to accumulate doesn't mean rejecting nice things or abandoning your goals. It means rejecting the dependency. It means shifting from acquiring to curating, from collecting to choosing, from wanting because everyone wants to wanting, because something fits the life you're actually living. You're allowed to like beautiful things. You're allowed to want comfort. You're allowed to enjoy what you worked for. The shift is just in why you're choosing them. Are you choosing because it adds something real, or because you're trying to fill a feeling? One of the most freeing realizations you can ever come to is this. You don't need to own everything you admire. You can love a place without buying the souvenir. You can love a person's style without copying it. You can love a moment without capturing it. You can celebrate someone else's success without feeling diminished by your own life. When admiration replaces acquisition, life becomes lighter in a way that's hard to describe until you feel it. You'll also start to notice that accumulation isn't only physical. It's mental, emotional, social. People accumulate unfinished projects in their heads, unmade decisions, unprocessed feelings, unanswered questions, unfiltered information. These invisible forms of accumulation create more stress than material clutter. You might be surrounded by tidy shelves and still feel suffocated because what's actually exhausting you isn't your stuff. It's the emotional weight you've been carrying for years. Real freedom requires decluttering both the outer and the inner. Another truth that doesn't get enough airtime. Accumulation steals time. Everything you own has to be managed, cleaned, organized, repaired, replaced, or eventually let go of. Owning more doesn't only cost money. It costs your most precious resource, the one you can never get back. Time. When you accumulate without intention, you trade hours of your life for things that don't actually contribute to your happiness or growth. There is a different way to live, and it begins with redefining success on your own terms. Success isn't how much you can stack on top of your life. Success is how much meaning remains once you remove what never mattered. Wealth isn't just the ability to buy, it's the ability to walk away. Freedom isn't owning more, it's needing less. And confidence isn't built by impressing people, it's built by no longer needing to impress anyone. When you finally step off the conveyor belt of more, you reclaim something you might not even remember having. Choice. Real choice. You stop buying out of impulse. You stop upgrading out of insecurity. You stop pursuing things out of comparison. Instead, you live from intention. You own what serves you. You pursue what actually fulfills you. You invest in what helps you grow. And for the first time in maybe a very long time, you start to feel something quietly extraordinary. Enough. Enough isn't stagnation. Enough isn't giving up. Enough is arrival. It's the moment you stop chasing validation and start living from contentment. It's the moment you realize the answer was never more. The answer was always this, fully experienced, fully appreciated, fully yours. And once you taste enough, accumulation loses its grip on you because you no longer need more to feel like you are enough. You already are. You always were. You just needed the noise to quiet down long enough to hear it. Chapter 6. Master the quiet power of letting things go. Unanswered. Your attention is the most valuable thing you own, and almost no one is taught how to protect it. In fact, almost everything in modern life is designed to take it from you. Every app, every platform, every headline, every push alert, every passive-aggressive group chat, every dramatic news cycle, they all want a piece of you. And the truly heartbreaking part is, most of us hand it over without even noticing. We surrender our focus 100 times a day in tiny, silent transactions, and then we wonder why we feel so scattered, so anxious, so unable to think clearly about the things that actually matter. Here's something I want you to really take in. Your attention is your life. Where it goes, your life goes. What it touches, your life becomes. If you spend an hour scrolling, you didn't just spend an hour. You spent an hour of who you are. If you spend an evening worrying about something that won't matter in a week, you didn't just lose time. You lost a piece of your one and only existence. This isn't said to scare you. It's said to wake you up. Because once you understand that attention is life itself, you start treating it the way you would treat your most precious belonging. Carefully, selectively, with reverence. Now here's the part nobody talks about enough. The things that drain your attention aren't always the dangerous things. They're the unimportant things, the forgettable things, the things that don't matter but feel like they do in the moment. Harmful things are loud and obvious. You can usually spot them. But the unimportant is sneaky. It dresses itself up as urgent. It feels pressing in the moment and forgettable by tomorrow. And while it never destroys you outright, it slowly fragments you until there's nothing whole left of your focus. When you fail to ignore the unimportant, your mind becomes a shattered mirror. Every piece reflects something, but no piece reflects anything fully. You check your phone while you eat. You think about work while you're with people you love. You scroll while you walk. You worry while you rest. You consume while you create. Nothing gets the full strength of your presence. And the saddest part is, you don't even realize it's happening because everyone around you is doing the same thing. We've collectively normalized the splintering of human attention, and we've called it being connected. But connection requires presence, and presence requires the courage to ignore. Learning to ignore the unimportant is not about becoming cold or careless. It's about becoming selective. Selective with your time. Selective with your reactions. Selective with the inputs you allow into your inner world. The world will always offer you more than you can handle. Always. That's not a bug. That's a feature of modern life. Your job isn't to handle everything. Your job is to decide what's worth handling. The skill of ignoring isn't laziness. It's a quiet form of intelligence. It's the wisdom to focus your energy on what genuinely moves your life forward and let the rest fall away like leaves you don't need to chase. Most people treat their attention as if it were endless. They assume they can afford to care about everything. But attention isn't infinite. You only get so much of it per day, and once it's spent, it doesn't come back. If you poured it into gossip, comparisons, manufactured controversies, random arguments, and meaningless stimulation, please don't be surprised if you have nothing left for your dreams, your relationships, your craft, or yourself. Focus needs capacity, and capacity comes from guarding your attention like the rare treasure it actually is. A beautiful place to start is by asking one simple question whenever something tries to pull you in. Is this mine to carry? Not every problem belongs to you. Not every drama deserves your involvement. Not every conversation needs your voice. Not every fight is yours to engage in. Not every emergency on someone else's calendar is automatically an emergency on yours. We have a tendency to inherit other people's stress, other people's urgency, other people's expectations. But every time you say yes to something that doesn't belong to you, you automatically say no to something that does. Another helpful question is this: will this matter in a week? In a month? In a year? Most things that feel urgent today will be completely forgotten by next week. You can spend 3 hours arguing with a stranger online about something that won't change a single thing. You can spend an entire morning consumed by a piece of news that will be replaced by tomorrow's headline. You can spend an evening replaying a small, awkward moment from a meeting nobody else even remembers. Modern life rewards reaction, but your soul is built through reflection. The two cannot coexist when one is constantly drowning out the other. Ignoring the unimportant also applies to the inner world, and this is where it gets really powerful. Not every emotion needs your immediate response. Not every impulse deserves action. Not every thought deserves deep engagement. You can feel something and let it pass through you. You can notice a craving without obeying it. You can have a dramatic thought without believing it. Emotional discipline is its own form of minimalism. It allows you to conserve your energy for the choices that shape your future instead of spending it on impulses that won't last 5 minutes. Practically speaking, this might look like turning off notifications that don't actually need your attention. Choosing not to check the news every hour. Stepping away from accounts that leave you feeling drained instead of inspired. Quietly removing yourself from conversations that have become exhausting. But the deeper transformation isn't external. It's internal. It's the moment you no longer feel compelled to respond to everything, defend yourself against everything, or be available for everything. Silence becomes a choice. Non-reaction becomes a strategy. Peace becomes a result. Have you ever noticed that the most fulfilled people in the world don't seem to be the ones doing the most? They're the ones doing the right things and ignoring the rest. Look closely at anyone who seems calm, focused, and grounded, and you'll find someone who has mastered the art of not engaging with what doesn't matter. They ignore distractions. They ignore noise. They ignore opinions from people whose lives they wouldn't want. They ignore drama. They ignore comparisons. They ignore everything that pulls them away from what they care about. Their power isn't in what they say yes to. It's in what they refuse to spend their energy on. There's a subtle but important difference between ignoring and avoiding, and it's worth pausing to understand. Avoidance is fear-driven. It runs from things. Ignoring is clarity-driven. It refuses to waste energy on things that don't matter. Avoidance keeps you small. Ignoring keeps you focused. One is rooted in anxiety. The other is rooted in self-respect. When you learn to tell the difference, you stop confusing the two and start using ignoring as the powerful tool it actually is. Here's the most freeing thing I can offer you in this chapter. Ignoring the unimportant isn't rude. What's actually rude is the assumption that you owe everyone access to your attention. What's actually rude is the expectation that you should drop everything to engage with whatever happens to be loud at the moment. What's actually rude is treating your most precious resource as if it should be available to anyone who demands it. You don't owe your attention to everyone who asks for it. You owe it to your values. You owe it to your purpose. You owe it to the people you actually love. You owe it to yourself. When you finally master the quiet power of letting things go unanswered, your inner world transforms in ways you wouldn't expect. The world doesn't get any quieter. The notifications keep coming. The opinions keep flying. The drama keeps unfolding. But you stop letting it inside you. The doors to your inner world finally have you as the gatekeeper, and in that protected space, something almost forgotten returns to you. You can hear yourself think again. You can hear yourself feel again. You can hear what your own life is actually trying to tell you. And when you can finally hear yourself, the path forward becomes obvious in a way it never was before. Chapter 7. Treat your hours like the treasure. They actually are. Money gets all the attention in our culture, doesn't it? We measure success with it, plan our futures around it, stress over it, dream about it, save it, spend it, talk about it endlessly. But there's another currency that's infinitely more valuable, and almost nobody guards it the way they should. Your time, your hours, the moments that make up your life. Here's the difference that changes everything. You can lose money and earn it back. You can lose belongings and replace them. You can lose opportunities and find new ones. You can lose almost anything in life and have a chance at recovery. But when you lose an hour of your life, it's gone forever. There is no refund, no second chance, no way to get it back. And yet, strangely, time is the one thing most people protect least. They guard their wallet, but give away their afternoons. They negotiate over prices, but never over schedules. They feel angry about being overcharged at a store, but feel nothing about being overbooked all week. This is one of the great quiet tragedies of modern life. We've been trained to think of money as scarce and time as abundant, when the actual truth is the exact opposite. Money is renewable. Time isn't. A meaningful life isn't built by measuring cost in dollars. It's built by measuring cost in hours. If something takes a year of your life, it's expensive, no matter how cheap the price tag says it is. If something gives you back time, it's priceless, no matter how much you paid for it. When you start treating time as your true wealth, your whole way of evaluating life shifts. Instead of asking, "How much does this cost?" you start asking, "How much of my one and only life will this require?" Instead of asking, "Can I afford this financially?" you start asking, "Can I afford this energetically? Can I afford this emotionally? Can I afford the time this will take from things that actually matter to me?" That single mental shift will simplify your life in ways no organizing system ever could, because suddenly the things that look small but eat your hours start to reveal themselves clearly, and the things that look fancy but steal your peace lose their appeal. Time is also the most honest reflection of what you actually value, even when your words say otherwise. We can declare anything we want about ourselves. We value family. We value health. We value growth. We value rest. But schedules don't lie. If you say you value your health but spend no time moving your body, resting properly, or feeding yourself well, the truth is in your calendar. If you say you value your relationships but rarely give the people you love your undivided presence, the truth is in your calendar. If you say you value learning but spend hours scrolling instead of reading, growing, or thinking, the truth is in your calendar. The calendar is one of the most spiritual documents in your life. It tells the story of who you actually are, not who you say you are. But here's the gentle good news. Calendars can be redesigned. Not all at once. You don't need to overhaul your entire life starting tomorrow. You don't need to wake up at 5 a.m., drink lemon water, and meditate for an hour to begin. You just need to start reallocating, one small adjustment at a time. 10 minutes of reading a day becomes 60 hours a year. 20 minutes of movement becomes 120 hours of caring for the body that carries you. 15 minutes of focused work in the morning becomes 90 hours of creation. These tiny shifts compound into completely different lives. The trick isn't dramatic. The trick is consistent. There's another part of treasuring your time that nobody warns you about until you learn it the hard way. Time needs boundaries the way money needs them. People will ask for your time the way children ask for sweets, without any awareness of the cost or the consequence, not out of malice, just out of habit. And if you're not careful, your calendar will fill up with other people's priorities, requests, expectations, and emergencies, favors, invitations, meetings, errands, small things that seem harmless individually, until you realize one day that your entire life has been scheduled by everyone except you. Protecting your time doesn't always require harshness. Sometimes it just requires honesty. Sometimes it requires saying no early instead of saying no late. Sometimes it requires saying no quietly, just by not making yourself constantly available in the first place. Availability isn't a virtue when it costs you yourself. A life lived for everyone except you isn't a generous life. It's a slowly disappearing one. Real generosity comes from a place of overflow, not depletion. You can't pour into others endlessly without pouring into yourself first. The opposite of treasuring your time is wasting it, and wasting it doesn't always look the way we expect. The obvious time wasters are easy to spot. Mindless scrolling, procrastination, hours of shallow entertainment. But the most dangerous time thieves wear the costume of productivity. You can spend your whole day doing things that look impressive on paper, but don't actually move you toward anything that matters. You can be exhausted by 6 p.m. and still not have done anything meaningful. Busyness is not the same as effectiveness. Activity is not the same as progress. Treasuring your time means having the wisdom to tell motion from real movement and choosing the second one, even when the first one is louder. Then there's the dimension of presence, which is maybe the most important one of all. You can spend time physically while being absent mentally. You can sit at the dinner table while your mind is at work. You can be playing with your child while your thoughts are buried in tomorrow's worries. You can be on vacation while obsessing over emails. Presence is not just being somewhere, it's being there, right there, with your whole self. Presence multiplies time. It takes ordinary minutes and turns them into memories. It takes regular Tuesdays and turns them into meaning. The richest people aren't the ones with the most hours. They're the ones who actually live the hours they have. There's also the future dimension to think about, and it's an important one. The way you invest your hours today shapes the wealth or poverty of your future self. Skills compound, knowledge compounds, relationships compound, health compounds, self-trust compounds. If you invest small amounts of time in things that grow over years, your future self becomes wealthy in ways money could never deliver. If you waste your hours on things that decay, your future self becomes poor, no matter how much you've earned. Your future self is being built right now, in this hour, in this choice, in this moment. Treat that with the reverence it deserves. When you begin treating time as your true wealth, the way you define success itself starts to shift. Success stops being about how much you can stack on top of your life. It becomes about how much of your life is actually yours. A person with less money, but full ownership of their time, is often far wealthier than someone with more money, but no control over their schedule. Real wealth isn't the freedom to buy. It's the freedom to be present, to be unhurried, to be available for the people and moments that actually matter. The dream isn't to be rich financially while being bankrupt in time. The dream is alignment, where your time funds the life you genuinely want to live. There's something else worth saying here. Your time will always be wanted by something. Your job, your phone, your responsibilities, your worries, your social obligations, your endless to-do list. If you don't claim it, something else will. Every single day, your time is being requested by 1,000 invisible hands. The question is whether you're going to be the one deciding where it goes, or whether you're going to keep handing it out and wondering where it disappeared to. When you start treating your time like the treasure it actually is, life slows down in the most beautiful way. It simplifies. It opens up. You become intentional instead of reactive, present instead of distracted, directed instead of scattered. Mornings feel different. Evenings feel different. Weekends feel different. You start saying no more often, but in a way that doesn't feel harsh, just honest. You start saying yes to fewer things, but those yeses start carrying real weight. The life that emerges isn't the busiest life. It isn't the most impressive life, but it's the most real one. And in the end, that's the only kind of life worth building. Your hours are not infinite. Your hours are not replaceable. Your hours are, quite literally, the substance of who you are becoming. Treat them gently, Treat them wisely. Treat them like the rare and sacred treasure they have always been. Chapter 8. Build gentle systems that carry you when you're tired. Here's a truth I wish someone had told me years ago. Most of the people who seem to have their lives together aren't actually more disciplined than you. They aren't superhuman. They aren't waking up every morning bursting with motivation while you're still hitting snooze. They've just figured out something that quietly transforms everything. They've built systems, small, simple, almost invisible systems that carry them through life so they don't have to fight every single battle from scratch. Chaos isn't always caused by a lack of effort. Far from it. Most overwhelmed people are not lazy. They're not unmotivated. They're not weak. They're just exhausted from making the same decisions over and over again, day after day, with no structure to support them. Every morning becomes a new debate. What should I wear? What should I eat? When should I work out? What should I do first? What can wait? What's the priority? Each individual decision feels small, but layered together, they create what psychologists call decision fatigue. And by the time you actually need your mental energy for something meaningful, it's already been spent on 100 tiny things that didn't really need that much thought. Systems are the antidote to all of this. And before you imagine spreadsheets, complicated software, or rigid hour-by-hour schedules, let me ease your mind. A system isn't fancy. A system isn't intimidating. A system is simply a repeatable way of doing something so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. You already use systems without realizing it. The way you brush your teeth, the way you make your morning coffee, the way you check the locks before bed. These things don't require thought anymore because you've quietly standardized them. They've become automatic. And when something becomes automatic, it stops costing you mental energy. It just happens, gently, in the background, while your real attention is free for the things that actually deserve it. One of the most powerful things a system does is eliminate what I like to call micro-stress. Micro-stress is the stress that comes from constant tiny decisions that individually seem harmless, but collectively wear you down. What to wear in the morning? What to make for dinner? When to start the laundry? Where to put that thing you keep forgetting about? Each of these is small, but you're making hundreds of them every day. And those hundreds of tiny choices are why you feel exhausted at 7 p.m., even though you didn't do anything particularly hard. Systems remove that weight by pre-deciding things for you, so you can stop relitigating the same questions over and over. When you build simple systems, you also stop needing motivation in the way you used to. And honestly, this is one of the most liberating shifts I can offer you in this book. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes based on your mood, your sleep, the weather, the season, your hormones, and 100 other factors you can't control. If your life depends on motivation, your life will collapse the moment motivation disappears, which it will regularly. Systems don't ask you to feel inspired. They only ask you to follow the path you already laid down for yourself when you were thinking clearly. That's why people who rely on motivation burn out, and people who rely on systems quietly build lives that hold together even on hard days. Systems can be applied to almost every area of your life: health, work, finances, relationships, learning, rest, creativity. A simple health system might be choosing 5 or 6 meals you actually love and rotating them through the week, so you're not standing in front of the fridge debating dinner every night. A simple financial system might be automating a small amount of savings each month so willpower never gets a vote. A simple work system might be batching similar tasks together so your mind isn't switching gears all day long. None of these systems are dramatic. None of them require a personality transplant. They just remove friction. They give you back bandwidth. And bandwidth in modern life is everything. But here's the part most people miss. The best systems are simple, almost embarrassingly simple. We live in a world that worships optimization, and there's an endless temptation to build elaborate, color-coded, perfectly engineered systems that look beautiful, but break the moment real life happens. Complicated system isn't a solution. It's just another problem in disguise. The whole point of a system is to make life easier, not more impressive. The simpler the system, the more likely you are to actually use it. And a system you don't use isn't a system. It's a fantasy. Here's another quiet gift that systems give you. They protect you during your low-energy seasons. Anyone can manage life when they feel strong, rested, and inspired. The real test comes during the harder chapters, when you're tired, when you're grieving, when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, when life is throwing everything at you at once. In those moments, willpower collapses, motivation disappears, but systems hold steady. They quietly catch you when you fall. They keep your basic life running even when you don't have the energy to think about it. A system is a quiet safety net you build for yourself when times are good, so it can hold you when times are hard. Systems also free your mind for what actually matters. Your brain wasn't built to be a to-do list. It wasn't designed to remember every appointment, every reminder, every detail of your day. When you offload the boring logistical stuff into a system, your mind finally gets to do what it's actually good at: thinking, creating, connecting, imagining, feeling. Most people never experience the true power of their own minds because their minds are too busy holding random reminders. A system carries the boring stuff so your mind can carry the meaningful stuff. A wonderful place to start building systems is asking yourself one simple question. Where do I keep struggling with the same thing over and over? Wherever there's repetition, there's an opportunity for a system. If you keep running late, you don't need more discipline. You need a system. If you keep forgetting things, you don't need to try harder. You need a system. If your evenings keep dissolving into nothing, you don't need to feel guilty. You need a system. Wherever you've been blaming yourself, try blaming the lack of structure first. It's almost always the real culprit. There's another underrated benefit of systems that I rarely hear people talk about. They reduce conflict in relationships. Most arguments between partners or family members aren't about values. They're about logistics. Who does what? When does it get done? How is it handled? When there's no system, every task becomes a renegotiation. Every responsibility becomes a potential argument. But when there's a simple system in place, things just happen. Less friction, less resentment, more peace. You don't have to build 100 systems overnight. Just start with one. Pick the area that drains you the most, the one that always seems to slip through the cracks. Design a simple, repeatable approach for that area, and watch how much lighter your week feels. Then, when you're ready, build another and another. Slowly, your life starts to feel less like a daily survival mission and more like a gently flowing rhythm. You're no longer at the mercy of mood, memory, or willpower. You're engineering ease. You're designing softness into your days. And in a world that constantly worships complexity, that kind of quiet simplicity isn't just rare. It's revolutionary. Chapter 9. Slow down, so life stops slipping through your fingers. Have you ever finished a year and felt like it just happened to you? Like it slipped through your hands while you were busy responding to it? You weren't slow. If anything, you were moving faster than ever. But somehow, when you look back, the year feels strangely empty. Not empty of activity, empty of meaning, empty of texture, empty of the things you'll actually remember in 20 years. This is what speed does to a life. It fills it with motion and steals it of memory. We live in a culture that has confused speed with progress. Faster mornings, faster meals, faster meetings, faster relationships, faster goals, faster results. Even our resting has become rushed. We try to relax efficiently as if peace itself were a productivity metric. And underneath all this rushing is a fear most people don't even realize they're carrying. The fear of falling behind, the fear of missing out, the fear of being outpaced by some invisible scoreboard nobody actually agreed to play on. We rush because slowing down feels dangerous, but the truth is we're being damaged far more by the rushing than we ever could be by the pause. Slowing down is not laziness. Please hear me on this. Slowing down isn't weakness. Slowing down isn't a lack of ambition. Slowing down is one of the most strategic, intelligent, and self-respecting things you can do in a fast world. It's the art of moving through your life with intention instead of impulse. It's the recognition that the fastest path is rarely the most fulfilling one. If speed alone could deliver happiness, the people who rush the most would be the most fulfilled. They aren't. They're often the most exhausted, the most disconnected, and the most unsure of why they're chasing what they're chasing. When you slow down, the first gift you receive is the ability to think clearly. Real thinking, not reactive thinking. Real thinking allows you to make better decisions, choose better opportunities, avoid unnecessary mistakes, and pour your energy into what genuinely deserves it. A rushed mind cannot see clearly. It reacts instead of reflecting. It repeats instead of innovating. It accumulates instead of curating. It performs instead of choosing. Slowing down gives you back access to clarity, and clarity is one of the most powerful multipliers in your life. A slow, clear decision is worth 1,000 fast, foggy ones. There's also an emotional gift to slowing down that almost nobody warns you about. When you move too fast, you stop feeling. You stop noticing the small, beautiful textures of your own life, the warmth of someone leaning into you, the softness of an early morning before the day begins, the taste of food you actually paid attention to, the quiet pride of a task done well, the comfort of being fully present with someone you love. Busyness numbs all of this. It removes the richness from life and replaces it with efficiency. And efficiency might serve machines well, but it slowly drains humans. We're not designed to live in pure output mode. We're built to absorb, to savor, to interpret, to feel. Speed cuts us off from the very thing that makes us alive. Slowing down also raises the quality of everything you do. When you rush, you cut corners. You half-finish things. You produce mediocre results. You miss details you'll later have to fix. When you slow down, even slightly, you give your work the attention it deserves the first time. You build things you're actually proud of. You handle situations more gracefully. You communicate more carefully. You notice mistakes before they become problems. The strange truth is that slowing down often saves you more time than rushing does, because rushed work has to be redone, while careful work tends to last. This same principle applies to your goals, and it's worth sitting with. So many people choose goals based on how fast they can be achieved. They want quick results, quick transformations, quick success. But meaningful goals don't operate on quick timelines. Real skills take time. Real growth takes time. Real relationships take time. Real character takes time. Real health takes time. You cannot rush compounding. Compounding is earned slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, until one day you look up and realize you've become someone you didn't even recognize in the best way possible. When you slow down, you allow compounding to work in your favor instead of constantly interrupting it. Slowing down also gives you the rare gift of self-observation. You start noticing patterns in yourself. What energizes you, what drains you, what distracts you, what helps you focus, what kind of mornings produce your best work, what kind of evenings leave you depleted. Self-awareness is one of the most underrated superpowers in modern life, and it begins the moment you stop sprinting long enough to actually pay attention to your own existence. Observation leads to insight. Insight leads to better choices. Better choices, made consistently, lead to a life that quietly transforms in ways no rushed person ever experiences. Relationships especially suffer in a fast life. You cannot build trust quickly. You cannot build intimacy quickly. You cannot rush understanding into being. The human heart doesn't operate on speed. It operates on presence, patience, and repeated showing up. The more rushed your interactions are, the more shallow they become. The more shallow they become, the less fulfilling they feel, no matter how many of them you have. Real relationships are not fast food experiences. They're slow cooked. They take time, attention, and the willingness to actually be there. When you slow down, your relationships deepen almost automatically, because you finally have the bandwidth to truly meet the people in front of you. Slowing down also gives you back something modern life is always trying to steal: control over what counts as urgent. So much of what feels urgent in your day actually isn't. Most urgency is manufactured. It's designed to pull you away from your real priorities and into someone else's agenda. The more you slow down, the more you start to see this clearly. Does this actually need to happen right now? Does this even matter? Will I care about this in a week? These three questions alone can dissolve half the stress in your life. Manufactured urgency loses its power the moment you stop agreeing to it. Here's the most counterintuitive truth about slowing down. It actually makes you faster in the long run. You make fewer mistakes. You waste less energy. You build sustainable habits instead of burning out and starting over every 6 months. You build momentum that keeps growing instead of constantly resetting from zero. Slowing down doesn't mean falling behind. It means moving smoothly. And smooth, in the long run, always becomes fast. But maybe the deepest gift of slowing down is this: it reconnects you to your actual life. Not the life you're rushing toward, the one you're already living, You stop racing toward the next milestone and start noticing the one you're standing in. You stop treating your days as something to get through and start treating them as something to be in. And that single shift, slow and quiet as it is what turns existence into experience. Because fulfillment doesn't come from speed. Fulfillment comes from depth. And depth is only possible when you finally let yourself slow down enough to feel it. Chapter 10. Say yes less, mean it more. Your life will never feel simple if you keep saying yes to things you don't actually want. It really is that direct. Most people think their stress is caused by too many responsibilities, but if you look closely, you'll often find that the real cause isn't the responsibilities themselves. It's all the things you said yes to without really meaning it, the favors you didn't have the energy for, the events you didn't really want to attend, the commitments you accepted out of guilt, the plans you made because you didn't know how to gracefully decline. Each yes seemed small in the moment, but yeses accumulate the same way clutter does, quietly, until one day your whole life feels like a closet you can't close. Saying yes feels generous. It feels supportive. It feels mature. From a young age, we're taught that yes is the polite, helpful, ambitious answer, and no is treated like rudeness, like rejection, like something only difficult people use. So we develop the habit of saying yes automatically, almost without checking in with ourselves first. Then we wake up one day inside a life full of obligations we never really wanted. Not because someone forced us into them, but because we kept saying yes when our gut was whispering no. Here's the part nobody talks about clearly enough. Every yes is a tiny contract. It's a small piece of your life that you're agreeing to give away. When you say yes to something, you're not just saying yes to that thing. You're saying no to everything else you could have done with that time and energy. Every yes is also a no in disguise. A yes to one thing is a no to rest. A yes to one event is a no to a quiet evening. A yes to one obligation is a no to your own dreams that quietly need attention too. This isn't to make you feel guilty for ever saying yes. It's to help you start saying it consciously instead of reflexively. The strangest thing about saying yes too much is that we often do it to avoid a few seconds of discomfort. We don't want to disappoint. We don't want awkwardness. We don't want someone to think less of us. So we agree to something we don't want, just to avoid that brief, uncomfortable moment of declining. But by avoiding those few seconds of discomfort, we often create months of resentment, exhaustion, or regret. A 5-second no can save you from a 5-month obligation. A simple, kind decline can protect an entire season of your peace. There's a phrase that has changed how I think about this, and I want to share it with you. You will always disappoint someone. The only question is whether you'll disappoint others occasionally or yourself constantly. That's the choice. Because if you keep saying yes to everything, you're not really being kind. You're just outsourcing the disappointment from them onto yourself, where it slowly accumulates as quiet bitterness, exhaustion, and a creeping sense that your life isn't really yours. Saying no isn't selfish. Please let that sentence sink in. Saying no isn't selfish. Saying no is self-respecting. It's boundary honoring. It's clarity in action. When you say no, you're not rejecting people. You're choosing yourself, your time, your direction, your peace. And the people who genuinely care about you will respect that. The people who don't were never really respecting you anyway. They were respecting your compliance. A useful way to begin shifting this pattern is to think of every potential yes as a trade-off. Before agreeing to something, even briefly, ask yourself, is this worth exchanging part of my life for? Because that's exactly what's happening. You're trading hours, energy, and emotional bandwidth for whatever you're saying yes to. If the answer is yes, this is genuinely worth it, then great. Say yes wholeheartedly. But if the answer is hesitant, reluctant, guilt-driven, or fear-based, that's not really a yes. That's a no in disguise, dressed up to avoid discomfort. Real generosity, the kind that nourishes both you and the people around you, has structure. It has limits. It comes from overflow, not depletion. A yes given from depletion isn't generosity. It's self-erasure with a smile. You cannot pour from a cup that's already empty. You cannot give meaningfully when you've already been giving past your capacity for years. Healthy giving comes from a full life, and a full life requires the courage to protect it. Another reason people struggle with saying no is the fear of missing out. There's a quiet panic that whispers, "What if this is the only chance? What if I should take this opportunity? What if saying no closes a door I'll regret?" But here's the honest truth. Most opportunities aren't actually rare. They feel rare in the moment, but life is endlessly generous with possibilities for people who know what they want. Saying no to the wrong things is what creates space for the right things to find you. Chasing every opportunity isn't a strategy. It's a slow burnout disguised as ambition. The most fulfilled people aren't the ones who say yes to everything. They're the ones who choose carefully and let everything else pass by without panic. There's also social pressure to consider, and this is where it can get especially tricky. Many requests don't come as direct demands. They come dressed as expectations, invitations that feel obligatory, group plans that everyone seems to assume you'll join, family traditions that no one ever questioned, cultural scripts you've been following without examining. You don't have to satisfy every social script that life hands you. You don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to do everything everyone else is doing. A life crammed with obligations might look full from the outside, but if it's not aligned with you, it feels claustrophobic from the inside. And from the inside is the only place that actually counts. A small habit that can change everything is learning to pause before you respond. Most regretful yeses happen because we answer instantly, before our actual feelings have a chance to surface. Try giving yourself even just a few seconds. Let me check and get back to you. Can I think about it and let you know tomorrow? I want to make sure I can really show up for this before I commit. These small phrases give your real answer time to rise. And when you create space between the request and your response, you'll find yourself saying yes to fewer things, but meaning it much more deeply. There are countless kind ways to say no. I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm not able to right now. Thank you for the invitation, but it's not going to work for me this time. That sounds wonderful, but it doesn't fit with where my energy needs to go right now. None of these require long explanations. None of them require apologies. A no doesn't owe the world a justification. A no with clarity and warmth is one of the most respectful things you can offer, both to yourself and to the person asking. It honors their request by giving them honesty instead of a half-hearted commitment they would have eventually felt anyway. When you start saying no more often, something beautiful happens. Your yeses begin to mean something. They start carrying weight again. The people in your life start to feel the difference. When you do show up, you actually show up. When you do commit, you commit fully. Your presence stops feeling diluted. Your time stops feeling scattered. The people who value you will respect your new clarity. And the people who only valued your availability will quietly drift away, which is honestly one of the kindest things life can do for you. In the end, simplicity isn't only about owning less or doing less. It's about agreeing less, but agreeing more meaningfully. The yeses you give from clarity, from love, from real desire, those are the ones that actually shape a beautiful life. The yeses you give from fear, guilt, or pressure are the ones that quietly steal it. Choose carefully. Choose kindly. But for the love of your one and only life, choose. Chapter 11. Make peace with what you own. The things in your home are doing more than just sitting there. They're talking to you, quietly, constantly, in a language you've probably never noticed. Every object you own is whispering something. Some are whispering comfort. Some are whispering pressure. Some are whispering memories you no longer want to revisit. Some are whispering versions of yourself you've already outgrown. And the strangest part is, most people walk through their own homes hearing all of this and never realizing it's why they feel restless even in their own space. Possessions are not just objects. They're symbols, stories, and sometimes even small pieces of identity we never consciously chose. What you own influences how you feel, how you move, how you rest, how you think about yourself. And yet, almost nobody sits down and examines their relationship with their things. We just accumulate by default, keep things by habit, display things for approval, replace things out of boredom. The result is a life surrounded by objects but starving for intention. To rewrite your relationship with what you own, you first have to understand what's actually driving you to acquire in the first place. People rarely buy things just because they need them. Most purchases are emotional purchases dressed up as practical ones. We buy for comfort, for distraction, for excitement, for reward, for escape, for nostalgia, for belonging, for hope. We buy to feel something. We buy to fix something. We buy to silence something. The actual object is almost beside the point. What we're really chasing is the feeling we hope it will deliver. And for a moment, it does. There's a small spark when something new arrives. But that spark is short-lived. The object becomes ordinary. And then we look around for the next spark. What we call clutter is really just delayed decision-making. Every item in your space represents a decision you haven't fully made yet. Keep, donate, fix, use, store, gift, throw away. Those undecided decisions sit in your space and quietly take up room in your mind too. You don't realize you're paying mental rent for the unfinished puzzle in your closet, the gym equipment you stopped using, the clothes that don't fit who you are now, the books you keep meaning to read, the gifts you don't love but feel guilty letting go of. Each of these objects is a small unfinished sentence in the story of your life. And unfinished sentences pile up. People often underestimate how much their physical environment affects their inner state. A cluttered space isn't just unattractive, it's exhausting. Even objects you're not actively looking at are still being noticed by your peripheral mind. They're still asking for your attention in tiny, invisible ways. A messy environment doesn't just look heavy. It feels heavy. Visual noise becomes mental noise, and mental noise drains the very energy you were trying to recover by being at home in the first place. There's also something tender that happens when our things become reminders of versions of ourselves that didn't quite happen. The art supplies for the hobby you never got around to. The textbooks from the career you decided not to pursue. The clothes you bought for the lifestyle you imagined but didn't end up living. The fitness equipment for the routine you started and stopped a dozen times. These aren't just objects. They're small ghosts of intentions. And while they sit in your space, they keep whispering, "You said you'd become this. You haven't yet. What's wrong with you?" None of those voices are kind. None of those voices are accurate, but they accumulate, and they make your home feel less like a sanctuary and more like a quiet courtroom. Rewriting your relationship with what you own doesn't mean owning nothing. It doesn't mean living with bare walls and empty drawers. It doesn't mean rejecting beauty or joy or comfort. It just means owning with intention. It means asking gently and honestly, does this support the life I'm actually living or the life I once thought I would? The question isn't, do I like this? The deeper question is, does this still belong in my story? Many things you like don't belong in your story anymore, and that's okay. Liking something isn't a strong enough reason to carry it forever. Possessions should serve you, not the other way around. People often imagine that owning more provides freedom, but more often, owning more provides obligation. Everything you own has to be cleaned, stored, maintained, protected, organized, and eventually replaced. Ownership has invisible fees that nobody talks about until you're paying them. Time, attention, mental load, physical space, emotional bandwidth. Simplicity quietly removes those fees. When you own less, you spend less of your life managing your stuff and more of your life actually living. The culture we live in tells us that new equals better, new equals upgraded, new equals improved, but new just means new. Novelty is a quick high. It fades. Utility lasts longer, meaning lasts longest. The things in your home that you treasure most are rarely the newest things. They're the ones that have stories woven into them. The mug that someone you loved gave you. The chair that watched you through your hardest year. The blanket that's been with you through 3 apartments. These objects matter not because they're impressive, but because they belong to you in some deep, quiet way. Here's something almost magical that happens when you own fewer things. You start appreciating the things you do own. When you have 50 mugs, you don't notice any of them. When you have 3 you adore, every cup of coffee feels like a small ritual. Scarcity creates appreciation. Abundance often dulls it. This isn't about deprivation. It's about presence. It's about giving the things in your life a chance to actually be experienced. There's an identity layer to all of this too, and it's worth being honest about. Many of us, often without realizing it, use possessions to communicate something about ourselves. Cars say something, watches say something, houses say something, furniture says something, phones say something. We choose objects partly for what they signal to others about who we are, and there's nothing wrong with caring about beauty or aesthetic. But when your identity becomes too tied to your stuff, your sense of self becomes fragile. It requires constant updating. It depends on validation from people whose opinions don't actually feed you. The freedom is in untangling who you are from what you own. When your identity stands on its own, you're free to choose objects that serve your actual life instead of your image. Rewriting your relationship with possessions also requires meeting a word we rarely use anymore: enough. Enough is a deeply unfashionable word in a consumer culture, but it's one of the most healing words you'll ever say to yourself. Enough means satisfied. Enough means complete. Enough means I'm not chasing the next thing right now. Enough is different for everyone, and there's no rule for what it should look like. Your enough doesn't have to match anyone else's. Your enough is whatever lets your inner life feel calm and your outer life feel aligned. Instead of just decluttering, try thinking in terms of subtraction. Decluttering is an event. Subtraction is a mindset. Decluttering removes what's already there. Subtraction prevents new clutter from arriving in the first place. Anyone can clean out a closet on a Saturday afternoon. Few people examine the impulses that filled it in the first place: boredom, insecurity, comparison, stress, loneliness, habit. When you start to recognize the inner triggers that drive you to acquire, you can address those instead of just managing the outcome. And slowly, your space stays calm because your relationship with consumption itself has changed. There's one more quiet truth worth saying. The fewer things you depend on, the less fear you carry. Fear of damage, fear of theft, fear of loss, fear of replacement, fear of maintenance. The more we own, the more there is to worry about. Possessions become anchors instead of tools, and anchors keep us stuck. Tools, by contrast, are used and put away. They serve a purpose and don't demand anything more. Aim for tools, not anchors. Aim for partners, not pressures. Aim for objects that earn their place in your life by truly contributing to it. In the end, making peace with what you own isn't a reduction. It's a refinement. It's choosing depth over display, meaning over appearance, intention over impulse. It's deciding that your home should feel like an exhale, not a performance. It's understanding that a beautiful life isn't measured by how much you've collected, but by how much room you've made for what actually matters. Chapter 12. Quiet the world so you can hear yourself again. The modern world is loud, not just in sound, but in stimulation. Loud in opinions, loud in updates, loud in expectations, loud in comparison, loud in headlines, loud in trends, loud in feeds that never stop refreshing, loud in conversations you didn't start, drama you didn't choose, anxieties you didn't ask to absorb. The noise enters you before you're even fully awake, through the first phone check of the morning, and it keeps following you until you fall asleep, often through one final scroll under the covers. Most of this noise isn't harmful in the dramatic sense. It's harmful in the cumulative sense. It steals your attention one notification at a time, your peace one headline at a time, your confidence one comparison at a time, your clarity one trending opinion at a time. And what makes it especially dangerous is how normal it has become. We don't even register it as noise anymore. It just feels like life. But it's not life. It's the static that's been covering up your life. Noise creates urgency where there was none. It makes the unimportant feel important. It pulls you into conversations you never wanted to be in, battles that aren't yours, expectations you never agreed to. When life feels overwhelming, it's rarely because you don't know what you want. It's because you're absorbing so much from the outside that you can't hear what's inside anymore. The signal is still there. It's just buried under the static. Simplicity requires quiet, not silence necessarily, just stillness, inner stillness, the kind of internal quiet where your own thoughts have room to breathe. Turning down the noise of the world doesn't mean hiding from it or rejecting it entirely. It means becoming careful about what parts of it you allow into your inner space. The world has unlimited opinions, demands, trends, anxieties, and expectations. You're not required to absorb all of it. Just like you curate what you bring into your home, you have to start curating what you allow into your mind. Because here's what most people don't realize. You can't think clearly when you're constantly interrupted. You can't feel deeply when you're constantly stimulated. You can't live intentionally when you're constantly reacting. These three losses, clear thinking, deep feeling, and intentional living, are the price tag of a noisy life. And almost nobody adds it up. One of the loudest sources of modern noise is digital stimulation. Phones, apps, alerts, feeds. These weren't designed to support your well-being. They were designed to capture your attention. Nothing in human history has ever been more effective at hijacking the human mind than a phone in a pocket. And most people surrender their focus to it without ever consciously deciding to. They wake up and immediately hand their mind to the digital world before they've even said good morning to themselves, before coffee, before a stretch, before a single thought of their own. The first sounds of the day belong to strangers, advertisers, algorithms, and people they've never met. And once your day starts in reaction, it's almost impossible to bring it back into intention. Then there's the noise of opinions. Everyone today seems to have something to say about how you should live, work, eat, parent, dress, succeed, dream, or rest. There's an endless supply of advice, mostly unsolicited, mostly contradictory. And the more opinions you absorb, the blurrier your own becomes. You stop trusting your own instincts. You start outsourcing your decisions. You become a patchwork quilt of other people's advice instead of one clear expression of yourself. Opinions can inform you. They should never command you. Most of the people speaking loudly into the void don't have to live with the consequences of your life. Only you do. So treat your inner voice as the most important voice in the room. There's also the relentless noise of comparison. Comparison whispers constantly that you're behind, that you're missing something, that you're not enough, that everyone else has figured it out. Social media amplifies this whisper into a chorus. You compare your beginning to someone else's middle, your tired Tuesday to their celebration weekend, your behind the scenes to their carefully staged moments, your inner life to their outer performance. Comparison is one of the most destructive thieves in modern life because it disguises itself as motivation. It feels like ambition, but it's really anxiety wearing a costume, and it never delivers what it promises. It only steals your joy and quietly hands you discontent in exchange. Then there's ideological noise, the constant exposure to outrage, controversy, conflict, and dramatized news. Some of it matters. Most of it doesn't, at least not in a way that requires your daily emotional engagement. But constant exposure to outrage trains your nervous system to live in low-grade anxiety. It teaches your body to feel like the world is on fire even when your actual life is fine. Outrage doesn't build clarity. It builds exhaustion, and clarity is what you need to live well. Turning down the noise doesn't require isolation. It requires filtration. It requires gentle, intentional boundaries between you and the endless input. It requires the small but powerful courage to disconnect without feeling guilty, to step away without feeling irresponsible, to unfollow without feeling rude, to pause without feeling unproductive. Quiet isn't ignorance. Quiet is strength. It's the strength to protect your most precious resource for what actually matters. Practically, this can look like setting specific times of day for technology so it doesn't bleed into every moment. It can look like turning off most of your notifications because, honestly, almost none of them deserve real-time access to your nervous system. It can look like leaving your phone in another room when you're working, eating, or resting. It can look like unsubscribing from anything that consistently leaves you feeling drained instead of nourished. It can look like starting your morning with even 10 minutes of quiet before the world rushes in. None of this is dramatic. All of it is transformative. But there's a deeper layer, internal quiet. External noise can be turned off with switches and settings. Internal noise requires awareness. Internal noise is the worry that loops in your head, the self-criticism that runs in the background, the replays of past conversations, the imagined future arguments, the mental rehearsals of things that may never happen. This kind of noise is harder to turn off because it doesn't have an off button, but it has a direction, and the direction is presence. Whenever your mind starts spinning into the past or future, gently bringing it back to the moment in front of you is one of the most healing acts you can practice. Presence isn't mystical. It's just the soft, repeated act of returning. Returning to your breath, returning to your hands, returning to the cup in front of you, returning to the person you're with, returning to now. When you start turning down the noise both outside and inside, you don't lose connection. You gain intimacy. You don't lose information. You gain clarity. You don't lose stimulation. You gain focus. You don't lose relevance. You gain direction. Noise tells you who to be. Quiet allows you to discover who you are. And there is no greater discovery than that. Chapter 13. Choose closeness over crowds. We've been quietly sold a lie that goes something like this. The more people who know you, the more fulfilling your life will be. The more contacts in your phone, the more popular your social feed. The more invitations on your calendar, the better. Connection has been confused with collection, and collection, no matter how big, doesn't fill the human heart. You can be surrounded by people and still feel deeply alone. You can have hundreds of acquaintances and still feel unseen. You can speak with someone every day and still never feel known by them. Real connection doesn't come from volume. It comes from depth. And depth requires 4 things that simply cannot be spread thinly across 100 relationships: time, attention, vulnerability, consistency. When you try to maintain social volume, you end up with relationships that stay forever on the surface. They become transactional, performative, or pleasant, but hollow. You exchange updates without exchanging meaning. You talk about events without ever talking about what you actually feel. You ask, "How are you?" and accept the polite lie in return. And after spending time in this kind of social diet for long enough, you walk away from interactions feeling entertained but not nourished, stimulated but not satisfied, distracted but not connected. Choosing depth means becoming intentional about who you share your real self with. Not everyone needs access to your inner world. Not everyone has earned the right to your stories, your fears, your dreams, your struggles, your hopes. Access isn't something you owe people just because they're in your life. Access is something earned through trust, time, and reciprocity. And when access is given to everyone, it stops feeling sacred to anyone, including you. One of the reasons people resist depth is because depth requires vulnerability. Vulnerability is exposure. It's the risk of being misunderstood. It's the chance of being judged. It's the possibility of being seen and not loved. So instead, many of us choose safety. We stay polite. We stay surface level. We share the highlights, but never the texture. We protect ourselves from being hurt. But we also protect ourselves from being known. And being unknown, even by everyone in your life, is its own kind of loneliness. Maybe the deepest kind there is. Depth also requires patience. You can't rush trust. You can't fast-forward intimacy. You can't shortcut the slow building blocks of real understanding between two people. Deep relationships form through repetition, through showing up, through small, ordinary moments stacked on top of each other for years. The world loves everything fast, but the heart loves everything slow. When you choose depth, you choose the heart's pace instead of the algorithms. Choosing depth also means accepting that some relationships won't go there with you. And that's not a tragedy. It's just a reality. Not every connection has the capacity for depth, and not every person is meant to be a close friend. Some people are meant to be pleasant acquaintances. Some are meant to be co-workers you enjoy. Some are meant to be neighbors you wave to. That's enough. Trying to force depth where it isn't naturally there only exhausts both of you. Letting connections find their natural shape is a kind of respect. When you stop trying to make every person a close friend, social clarity emerges. You start to see clearly who actually shows up for you, who reciprocates, who is curious about your inner life, who only contacts you when they need something, who supports you genuinely, who quietly competes with you, who lifts you, who drains you. None of this is about judgment. It's about awareness. And awareness lets you invest your social energy where it actually grows something real. There's also something to be said about expectations. Shallow relationships thrive on low expectations. Quick replies, witty banter, convenience-based interaction. Deep relationships thrive on different expectations: honesty, loyalty, presence, emotional courage, the willingness to have hard conversations and show up imperfectly. When you raise your relational standards, your social circle naturally narrows. Some people will drift away, some will quietly fade out. Some will lose interest. That's not a loss. That's filtration. The ones who stay will give you something volume never could. They will give you meaning. A surprising gift of choosing depth is that it actually reduces social anxiety. When you stop trying to maintain dozens of weak ties, you free yourself from the invisible weight of constantly performing. You stop trying to be interesting and start trying to be interested. You stop curating yourself and start expressing yourself. You stop worrying about how you come across and start being curious about the person in front of you. Shallow relationships are exhausting because they require performance. Deep relationships are energizing because they allow authenticity. Depth also transforms the kind of conversations you have. Instead of small talk, gossip, headlines, and updates, you start having conversations that actually move you. You talk about fears, about dreams, about things you've never said out loud, about what scares you, about what excites you, about what you're working through, about who you're becoming. Conversations stop being entertainment and start being exploration. And in those conversations, you don't just learn about the other person, you learn about yourself. Real conversation is one of the most underrated tools for self-discovery in existence. This applies to romantic relationships too, and it applies powerfully. Many people chase intense chemistry, quick attraction, instant electricity. Chemistry is wonderful, but chemistry without depth fades almost as fast as it sparks. Depth is what builds compatibility. Depth is what creates resilience when things get hard. Depth is what makes love sustainable across the long, ordinary stretches of life. Chemistry sparkles. Depth sustains. You can feel attraction with many. You can build closeness with few. And the few are infinitely more valuable than the many. Choosing depth changes your digital life too. The internet rewards volume, followers, likes, connections, numbers. But digital metrics rarely reflect real intimacy. You can be visible to thousands and still feel emotionally invisible. You can post often and still feel unheard. When you start choosing depth, you naturally use digital tools differently. You message fewer people, but with more meaning. You scroll less. You compare less. You reflect more. The digital world stops being a measure of your worth and starts being a tool you actually control. At its core, choosing closeness over crowds is an act of courage. It's easier to be widely liked than truly known. It's easier to chat than to reveal. It's easier to perform than to connect. But easier rarely leads to fulfillment. Fulfillment comes from depth. Depth in conversation. Depth in presence. Depth in commitment. Depth in love. When you start choosing depth, your social life doesn't shrink. It becomes real. The hollowness fades. The exhausting performance ends. The quiet pressure of being everywhere starts to lift. And slowly, beautifully, loneliness starts to retreat. Not because you have more people, because you finally have the right ones. The ones who actually see you. The ones who actually stay. The ones who, in a world full of crowds, choose to come close. Chapter 14. Let good habits run themselves. One of the biggest myths about living a simple, intentional life is that it requires endless willpower. We imagine that the people who exercise regularly, save money consistently, eat well, and stay focused must wake up every day and fight some heroic internal battle. But that's not how it works. Willpower is unreliable. Motivation comes and goes. If your life depends on feeling inspired every morning, your life will collapse the moment the inspiration fades, which it will, regularly. The real secret is automation. When you automate what doesn't need willpower, the good things happen on their own. You stop debating with yourself. You stop negotiating. You stop relying on emotional energy you don't always have. Automation can mean technology, but more often it just means defaults, habits, and small structural choices that remove decisions from your daily life. If you automate your savings, you don't have to remind yourself every month. If you choose a few default outfits for the week, you don't waste mental energy each morning. If you build a default workout time, you don't argue with yourself about whether to go. Defaults remove uncertainty, and uncertainty is exhausting in ways most people underestimate. There's also the deeper benefit of automation. It removes shame. When everything depends on willpower, every slip feels personal. You start to believe you're weak or undisciplined. But when good actions are automated, slips become rare. You stop fighting yourself daily and start respecting yourself naturally. Self-trust grows quietly in the background. Automation isn't rigidity. It isn't killing spontaneity. It's removing friction so the things that matter happen with less effort. It's a quiet form of kindness toward your future self. It says, I care enough about my life to make good things easier and bad things harder. When you stop relying on motivation and start relying on design, your life finally begins to feel sustainable. Chapter 15. Let simplicity become who you are. Simplicity can begin as a tactic. Cleaning a drawer, organizing a calendar, saying no more often. But tactics alone won't transform your life. For simplicity to truly take root, it has to become a philosophy, a lens, a way of seeing. Most people meet simplicity in moments of crisis. They simplify because they're exhausted. They declutter because they're overwhelmed. They slow down because they're burning out. But reactive simplicity is temporary. It fixes the moment, and then old patterns return. Without a deeper shift in how you see your life, the chaos always finds its way back. A philosophy of simplicity asks a more lasting question. What kind of life is worth living? Not in some grand poetic sense, in your real, daily, ordinary sense. A life with space to breathe, space to love, space to grow, space to rest, space to be present without rushing through every moment to get to the next. When simplicity becomes philosophy, success itself gets redefined. You stop measuring your life by what you've accumulated and start measuring it by how much of your life is actually yours. How aligned your days feel, how calm your inner world is, how connected you are to the people who matter, how awake you feel in your own life. Simplicity stops being something you do when life gets too loud. It becomes how you live when life is good. You don't wait for chaos before you simplify. You simplify so chaos has nowhere to land. You don't wait for burnout before you rest. You rest as a way of life. You don't wait for clutter before you declutter. You curate from the start. And when simplicity becomes who you are, life doesn't get smaller. It gets clearer, sharper, more yours. The unnecessary fades away on its own, and the essential takes its rightful place. You stop chasing, you start choosing, you stop performing, you start living. And slowly, almost without noticing, the version of you that was always underneath the noise rises up and stays. Conclusion: the promise of simplicity has always been the same. When you remove what doesn't matter, what does matter finally has room to breathe. Throughout this journey, we've talked about overwhelm, about clarity, about letting go, about choosing better, about stepping off the conveyor belt of more. We've talked about attention, time, systems, slowness, and the quiet courage of saying no. We've talked about possessions, noise, depth, and finally, philosophy. Each chapter offered a different angle, but the heart of the message has been one continuous truth. Less, when chosen well, is the most generous gift you can give your own life. The world will never voluntarily quiet down for you. It will never ask if you have enough space to think. It will never apologize for the noise. That space, that quiet, that life has to be built by you. And that's exactly what simplicity is. the slow, brave, beautiful act of building a life that finally feels like yours. A simple life is not a small life. It's a focused one. It's a present one. It's a life where ambition doesn't compete with peace, where relationships don't compete with self, where doing doesn't compete with being. Simplicity strengthens everything it touches. It makes your work deeper, your love richer, your rest more honest, your days lighter on your shoulders and more meaningful in your heart. If there's one truth to carry with you, let it be this. A meaningful life is not built by what you add. It's built by what you remove. You remove the noise to hear yourself. You remove the excess to find clarity. You remove the unnecessary so the necessary can finally shine. Simplicity isn't disappearance. It's distillation. It distills your life down to the people you love, the work that matters, the values that guide you, and the dreams that feel truly yours. You don't have to wait for the world to slow down. The world won't. But you can. You can turn down the noise. You can choose slower rhythms. You can choose deeper relationships. You can choose a life that's light enough to carry and meaningful enough to be proud of. Less is more is not a slogan. It's a compass. And if you follow it gently, patiently, day by day, your life won't just become simpler. It will become unmistakably, beautifully, finally yours.